I think it's safe to say at this point that Persona has this whole character thing pretty down packed. You can't swing a dead Nekomata without hitting another popularity poll or tier list or some sort of discussion about who's the best when it comes to these sorts of characters. Of course, you'd never catch me degrading myself like that. I mean, I view these characters objectively. I'd never be caught dead making some grandiose statement about who's best girl or something like that. But yeah, Persona really does an excellent job at creating well-rounded, lovable characters. That all being said, I've always noticed a bit of a curious trend that Atlus takes. Persona has a bit of a history of creating a developed and well-loved group of friends, and then making a reboot or spin-off or whatever, and trying to cram another character into that dynamic. And I mean, it's not like this fails spectacularly or anything. A lot of these characters usually end up being pretty decent in their own right, but how do I put this? They always feel superfluous. And I mean, to be fair, it's always going to be difficult to try and force a new face into a group your audience is already connected with. And, to Atlus's credit, while the characters may feel a little out of place, they're usually strong enough on their own that they're not going to be hated or anything like that. Labrys was cute and was one of the few characters that managed to fit in moderately well with the original cast. Zen and Rei had their own little thing going on, and Kasumi had them eyes. So, you know, she was guaranteed to at least be moderately well liked. That being said, it's very unlikely that most of these characters will ever have any sort of important role to play outside of their specific games. The only one that ever has managed to is Marie, and like, really? Her? And so I began to wonder, like, why is that? Why do these characters feel tacked on? And well, aside from the, again, obvious case that it's just hard to add a character to an existing group like this, I began to notice something else that a lot of these characters share in common. And that's that they're really not that relatable. I think one of the things I love most about the many different characters within this universe is that, for the most part, they all have very realistic problems to deal with. Things we all, as human beings, can relate to in some way. Grudges, pressure, obligations, expectations, and yeah, even death. Some of them obviously have some very fantastical elements in their life, but at their core, their motivations are usually fairly simple. The most far-out examples in the original cast are probably Futaba thinking she caused her own mother to commit suicide, and Eternal Punishment Tatsuya dealing with, that whole hot mess. But for them, the games really do go out of their way to walk us through what it is they're going through, and that deep down, despite their issues being very complex, at their core, they're just looking for something simple. Futaba doesn't want to keep blaming herself. Tatsuya doesn't want to be alone, doesn't want to forget. Well, when it comes to the spin-off parade, I feel like the relatability starts to disappear a little. They seem to become, I don't know, excessively tragic? I mean, it's not like it's impossible for you to empathize with someone going through something that you've never experienced before. Again, most of these are decent enough characters that I don't despise or anything. But it's gotten to this point where I feel like Atlus is just trying to one-up itself every time in manipulating my heartstrings. Like, they just keep creating these unrealistically, devastatingly tragic backstories. Like, no amount of therapy could ever make these people sane kind of tragedy. Alright, welcome everyone to this day's group therapy session. Who would like to go first? I would. Alright, Konami, you have the floor. So, not that long ago, I found out that my senpai in the idol industry killed herself right in front of my eyes. The memory was so traumatic that I had to suppress it and forget about it entirely. Oh, you think that's bad? Well, listen to this. Not only did I have to watch someone kill themselves, but that person was my sister. And it wasn't for some vague reason like she was fed up with society or anything. She killed herself because she was trying to save my life. The guilt was so tremendous that I had to suppress it myself. And not only that, I started to believe that I was my sister. Oh, that's all that you had to deal with? I was so sickly my entire life that I couldn't let my skin come in direct sunlight. So, when I inevitably passed away, my brain was so scrambled by the depression of my pointless existence that I couldn't even suppress my own memory. I had to ask a time god to do it for me. Amateurs! Amateurs, all of you! A bunch of scientists forced me to kill dozens upon dozens of my own siblings, made me watch as the light slowly faded from their eyes. I was a literal killing machine. My brain was so messed up by all of it that a part of it literally jumped out of my body and started a fucking tournament. Yeah, but, you're a robot. Does that even really count? Yeah, why did they even, give you emotions? What? How dare you? How dare you act like I don't matter? Well, I mean, it's not like it's so far up your ass to be able to take it, son of a... Take that, excuse me. Wow, excuse me. Sorry, would it be alright if I shared my story? No. Right. Anyways, the only characters that don't fit into this mold are Zen, Mary, and Metis, who, weirdly enough, are unrelatable, but for a completely different reason. Basically, none of them are human, and they all go through kind of a different variation of the same story. You know, the whole, I'm an emotionless eternal being, but these human emotions, they're so different from everything I know. Perhaps I too have a heart. Seriously, Atlas, how often are you gonna make us go through that exact story? Anyways, despite all that, there is one exception to this, where we can finally get to the main point of this video. I know that was a long preamble, but I really need to get some of that off my chest. Anyways, as you could probably tell from the title of this video, the exception I'm talking about is Hikari from Persona Q2. Hikari is a character that I had no expectations of. I remember watching the first trailer for Q2 and thinking, well, there's this game's Ray. This is Persona Q, man. It's all about those Persona 3, 4, and 5 personalities bumping off each other. I can't wait to see if Haru and Mitsuru compare expensive tea facts, or Ryuji and Kanji butt heads because they're both lovable morons, or maybe Shinji shows up the entire cast in a cooking contest. I was expecting all sorts of wacky antics. But, somehow, I never expected the one thing I'd really take away from the game was this new girl. The Phantom Thieves meet with Hikari in a strange theater. One they're trapped in. One where the only exit seems to be to go directly into the movies themselves. While the Phantom Thieves are rather new arrivals, Hikari and a lady named Nagi seem to have been trapped there for at least a little while. Enough for them to have some sort of understanding of the layout of the place. Hikari herself seems exceedingly timid, barely able to even stammer out a sentence, much less have an actual conversation. Of course, because of this timid nature, she hasn't bothered herself to try and leave through these movies. Or, maybe it's because the manifestations of darkest emotions are running rampant through them. Whatever the case, she's pretty much stuck in the theater. Though, oddly enough, she doesn't seem too put out at the idea of staying there forever. Whatever the case is, the Phantom Thieves, being the nice guys that they are, offer to explore the movies for her, and only ask that she watch as they complete them. And so they head off and travel through a variety of different genres and many a wacky antic. Along the way, they of course pick up the P3 and 4 cast, and even a mysterious heroine from another timeline. Anyways, over the course of the game, Hikari starts to come out of her shell a little bit. And eventually, we make it to the 4th dungeon, where it's made apparent that this whole theater was a manifestation of Hikari's emotions and her unwillingness to confront them. Basically, a whole big message about how you shouldn't just conform to society's expectations, and that old tidbit about how you should follow your dreams. Well, actually, it's a little more complex than that. Less of a you should follow your dreams, and more of a you shouldn't feel bad for following your dreams. In any event, none of this is very surprising. The labyrinth is symbolically tied to Hikari's past is directly lifted from Rei in the first Persona Q. And the message itself is, a nice enough one, but one that I'm sure most of us have heard many, many times before. Now, the basic framework is not really what I want to talk about here. The thing I truly found fascinating about Hikari were the circumstances that led up to this moment. You see, in the 4th dungeon, we finally get to see why Hikari is here, why this whole labyrinth exists in the first place. And it involves several key moments in Hikari's past. The first happened when she was in elementary school. When she was young, Hikari was an outgoing, optimistic young girl. Her favorite thing in life were superhero movies. The idea of saving the day, protecting the weak, fighting for justice. Hikari was enthralled at the whole idea of it. She and her father would often play hero together. Those were some of the happiest memories of Hikari's life. In any event, one day when she was at school, Hikari and 2 other students were tasked with looking after the class rabbit. Unfortunately, the poor rabbit got sick and died while in their care. The teacher was upset with this and confronted the 3 students. She demanded an apology for failing to take care of the rabbit. The first students, not wanting to speak out, quietly apologized. But Hikari spoke up. She had noticed a vegetable in the rabbit's food, one that would make the rabbit very sick if it ate it. She had tried to convince the other 2 students that the rabbit shouldn't eat it, but they just wanted to follow instructions, just do what they were told. And they fed the vegetable to the rabbit anyways, leading to its death. The teacher, hearing this, got upset at Hikari, logically, upset that she would try to come up with a far-fetched excuse rather than just apologize. Why does she have to be like that? Can't she just follow instructions and not cause a fuss? If she just apologized, then they could move on and all this hullabaloo would pass into memory. But Hikari did nothing wrong. She spoke out and told the truth, and for that she has to apologize? But in the end, the pressure from the teacher and from her classmates forced Hikari to take the path of least resistance. And despite doing nothing wrong, she apologized. Next up, we jump forward a few years to middle school. Hikari's love for heroes died that day, same as the rabbit. However, her love for movies did not. While the heroes themselves may be fake, the feeling of joy she got from watching those movies certainly was not. So, despite everything that happened in elementary school, she was able to move on to middle school a fairly happy child, thanks in large part to once again her supportive father. Whenever the father got home from work, the 2 of them would spend hours whiling away watching any number of different genres of movie. In any case, one day while Hikari was at school, she came across a rather gloomy-looking girl with a bunch of writing smeared across her desk. It seems like she was getting picked on by some of the popular girls at school, so Hikari took it upon herself to befriend the girl. She figured, hey, I love movies, why don't you come along and try watching them with me sometime? And at first, the gloomy girl seemed happy at Hikari's gesture of kindness. The 2 had started their first step towards maybe becoming friends. However, the popular girls took notice of Hikari befriending their plaything, and started to mess with Hikari's stuff as well. When Hikari looked around for an explanation, the other girls in her class simply shrugged. It's your fault, isn't it? You befriended a girl that's getting bullied. If you didn't want this to happen, why step in the first place? Why do you have to be like that? Hikari was shocked, but figured she could manage a bit of vandalism. As long as we all stay friends, who really cares what a couple outsiders think? But the girls in Hikari's class didn't agree. Now that Hikari has made herself a target, who would be next? They can't risk hanging out with her anymore. What if the bullies target them next? No. The only real option now is to kick Hikari out of the group. She's already drawn too much attention. What do you say? Should we vote to kick out Hikari? One by one, each of the girls in Hikari's class raised their hands until all attention came on the gloomy girl, the one Hikari had started to befriend. She was nervous and refused to say anything. So the girls in the class simply said, okay, we'll kick you out as well. And at that, the gloomy girl raised her hand as well and voted to kick Hikari out of the group. Once again, Hikari had done nothing wrong. All she had done was try to offer a little kindness to someone who looked sad. And for that, she suffered. She lost her friends and became an outcast within her school. We cut again to several years later, as Hikari enters high school. Despite everything that's happened, thanks to the loving support of her father, she still has a dream. She wants to be a director. She wants to create a movie. Movies are her greatest joy in life. She can think of nothing better to devote her life to. However, her father is a very busy man. He's a single parent, so he needs to work rather long hours to take care of his daughter. Not that he resents it or anything, it's just what he has to do. As a result, Hikari's aunt and uncle have to visit often in order to help her father in raising Hikari. And they they're not nearly as pleased as Hikari's father is with her dream. Being a director? Come on now. Dreams are all well and good, but you're in high school for goodness sakes. It's time you planned for your real future, a real career, rather than this delusion that will never come true. Why can't you just be like other people? Try and be a normal member of society. Why do you have to be like that? But films are the only thing left that make Hikari happy. Why is it wrong for her to chase a dream, to put her heart into making a movie? That night, after the argument with her aunt and uncle, she hid away in her room, till eventually her father came home. With a gentle knock on the door, he walked in and asked her, "What's wrong?" Hikari remained silent. "Come now, Hikari. You know I can't help you if you don't tell me what's wrong." Hikari remained silent. "You know your aunt and uncle can be a bit harsh, but they're just concerned for your future." Hikari remained silent. Why do you have to be like that?
どうしてあなたはそうなの？どうしてあんたはそうなわけ？どうしてあなたはそうなのよ？いや、やめて。
光、どうしてお前はそうなんだ？
どうしてお前は？どうしてお前は？どうしてお前は？どうしてお前は？どうしてお前は？
どうしてお前は？どうしてお前はそうなんだ？
That's it, right there. That's the moment when I realized what I saw in Hikari. You see, with all these other characters, it always comes down to this sort of inciting incident that causes them to fall apart. Some truly horrific moment or event that causes them to just shatter and lose all reason. But with Hikari, it's more in line with the straw that broke the camel's back. Hikari doesn't have a terrible life. It's not great by any means. She's been picked on and bullied, she's been lonely and upset, but at the core of it, she still has a loving father and a passion that keeps her going. She doesn't have some truly unique, terrible past that has caused her to break down. But, bit by bit, these dark memories began to build up. The teacher blamed her for the rabbit's death, but whatever, she pushed it down and moved on. Her friends abandoned her when life got tough for them. Again, a painful memory, but she was able to suppress it, push it deep within her, and keep pursuing her dreams. Her aunt and uncle tried to stop her from following that dream. But again, it's difficult, but she can suppress it and move on. As long as she has her father and her dream, she can keep fighting for what she truly wants. And then, her father, seemingly, gave up on her. And that was it. Suddenly, everything that she bottled up inside, everything she controlled, was released at once. Suddenly, all those fears and insecurities were on top of her, pushing her down, 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 until she was so far gone that there was nothing she could do. She was drowning in a sea of anxiety, anger, despair, and so many other negative emotions. But there was nothing she could do. She was alone, afraid. Another speck in this thing we call the human subconscious. And it wasn't any one moment that broke her. It was just so many little things piling on top of one another, until she was trapped within her own mind. Of course, the most tragic thing about all of this is that Hikari's father didn't mean anything by his statement. Why is she like that? Why is she sad? All he was doing was asking, why is she sad? He wants to help her. If she could just tell him what is upsetting her, he could try with all his heart to make her feel better. But Hikari fails to see that, and it's only through the help of the Phantom Thieves and the other groups along for the ride that she's finally able to see what he truly meant. how distorted her entire world had truly become just because she kept so many little moments trapped within herself. You know, Hikari's not the most interesting character I've ever seen. She's not really complex in any sort of way. When she comes out of her shell, she doesn't strike me as a particularly endearing character or anything. I mean, she's fine, but she's nothing special. But, especially in this day and age of any number of unquestionably horrible things going on, I think we do have a tendency to keep the smaller problems to ourselves. And I think Hikari embodies a part of what everyday life has become at this point. And, well, to get a hopeful message out of that, while feeling so genuine, I'm not too embarrassed to say, it made me tear up a little. Well done, Atlas. You did a good job with Hikari.